We all want to get good value for money, especially with our crafting supplies. Dies can be expensive, so today I'm going to show you even more ways that you can get more from them. I started with the idea that I would make Christmas cards using non-Christmas dies, but I ended up expanding on that, so stick around to see my bonus cards. The first die set I'll be using is this tall type alphabet die set from Concord and 9th. It's a skinny font that means you can fit a lot of letters on a card front, and that gives you a ton of possibilities. I'll put a link in the description to a video I made last month showing lots of ways to use alphabet dies in your card making. My first card will be a thank you card, and I'm starting by using an ink swiping technique called swinking. I have a video about this technique as well, and I'll put a link in the description below so you can join the swinking challenge if you want. I used a rainbow of Catherine Pooler mini ink pads, but I excluded the green since my thanks sentiment is pretty short, plus I got some green where the blue and yellow mixed. I grabbed the letters I needed and I lined them up on the grid on my work surface. One of the fun things about this font is that it doesn't need to be lined up perfectly. In fact, I think it adds some fun and movement if the letters are a little wonky. I held them together with some 1-inch post-it tape, positioned them where I wanted on my swinked background, and then I ran it through my Gemini Junior. I also cut it 2 more times from plain white cardstock so I could stack up the letters for some dimension. Next, I got out my Misty and the Thank You for Being stamp set. I just got the new improved Misty because I was one of those people who had trouble with the old plastic hinges. These ones definitely feel more sturdy. I used the striped stamp and some blackjack ink to create a base for my rainbow letters to sit on. I also stamped the U from the set, positioning the letters so that I could get it into the right place. I used liquid glue to adhere the stacked up letters in place, and then to add a bit of sparkle, I used some Stardust stickles. This has been one of my all-time favorite products since, well, forever, and I still think it's the easiest way to add sparkle with minimal cleanup. Now here's the bonus. I'm going to do both Christmas and non-Christmas cards for each die set that I show you. Alphabet dies are easy to use at any time of year, and sure, I could spell joy or merry or some other festive word, but what about something a little more creative? First, I created a winter sky background by blending Fiesta Blue ink and then Suede Shoes ink over my panel with some Ultinew blending tools. These big brushes make blending large areas quick and easy. I worked my way from the edges to the center so that I'll end up with kind of a glow when I'm finished. I came back in with the same brush in the darker blue just on the edges. Then I used one of my favorite new products, Avery Elle Clear Shimmer Spray, to add shimmer to the panel. I find that it also softens the colors of the inks and the blending too. I set the panel aside to dry and then I cut 12 Ys from some Concord and 9th silver glitter cardstock. Do you want to build a snowflake? Yeah, that's my idea, but I wasn't prepared to sing for you. The shape of the Ys is perfect to build a snowflake. For me, the trickiest bit of snowflakes is the angle required between the arms, so I cut a hexagon just from some scrap paper to help me with the positioning. And of course I did it in the most difficult way, trying to hold it in place while I kind of slid each Y underneath. Looking at it now, I can see that it would have been so much easier to just use a pencil to put a dot on each corner of the hexagon and then glue my Ys down. I felt like the snowflake wasn't fluffy enough with 6 arms, so I added the next 6 as well. You could adjust the size of your snowflake by simply changing how far apart you place your Ys, and you would get a completely different look if the arms of your Ys opened wider, or if you used a lowercase y. Take a look at the shapes of some of your letters and see what you can do with them. O's, V's, W's, and X's often make fun shapes to play with. To finish it off, I stamped a sentiment from Silent Night onto a circle of white cardstock. I added a silver frame, and I popped it up into the center of the snowflake. I added some Catherine Pooler Blackfoot River sequins for more sparkle. My next die set is a new layering cover plate set from Birch Press Design. These cover plate sets are an investment, so if you do buy one, you definitely want to have lots of ways to use it. I'll put a link to my video about getting more out of this type of die set in the description below. This set is called Viola. It has a pattern of flowers with multiple petals, which is the ultimate in floral versatility, since they can be daisies or poinsettias. First, I cut the 3 layers that I'll need for my non-Christmas card, and then I cut 1 more of just that top layer, and I just want to show you how useful this Spellbinders Tool-in-One brush tool is for releasing all those little bits from an intricate die like this. It makes all the difference in reducing frustration of trying to poke out tons and tons of little pieces from a die. I used this top layer as a stencil for my Christmas card, and I started with the yellow centers. I used some of the smaller life-changing blender brushes that help you get your ink into small areas more accurately. When I had the centers done in yellow, I came back in with Samba, which is a bright red, and I did all the flower areas. When I put my grass skirt green down, I realized that my ink pad was super juicy and the green was darker than I had envisioned. It was also darkened because it mixed a little bit with the red. No problem, but I did go back onto the flower areas with rouge ink to darken them up so that the color scheme was more cohesive. I find when I'm blending small areas like this, it's hard to get a smooth blend, but I'm not too worried because the texture will be pretty, and once again, I use the Viola shimmer spray, which will soften the blend as well as add a sparkle. And of course, I have the stencil as well as the panel, so this technique is a 2-for-1. I finished this card with a stacked up Simple Joy sentiment cut from some Tonic satin gold cardstock, as well as some metallic gold jewels from Pretty Pink Posh. Now for the daisy version. I'm going to add my colors in a different way for this one. The bottom layer of these die cuts has tiny faux stitching marks right on it, which makes it easy to tell where to color. I used Copic markers and I started with green around the leaves, and then I did the flower areas with a rainbow of bright colors. Here's a quick look at how the bottom 2 layers look together, and you can see how this doesn't look at all like a Christmas card. In fact, it's pretty just like this, and you could leave it here. But I went to the next step and I colored the top layer as well. This time there are no areas that will be green, just the flower colors. You could get a different look by either darkening or lightening the colors, or mixing the colors up, but I just stayed with the ones I'd used on the bottom layer. When you're coloring these delicate dies, you want to be careful not to bend or rip them, but also to get full coverage so there are no little white areas where you want color. Adding color to 2 of the layers really emphasizes the dimension you build with these layered die cuts. You can clearly see the 3 layers of the die plus the base of the card. To finish this one, I added a honey script layered thanks die cut in black and white. This whole idea started when my friend Jenny and I were talking about whether or not we were ready to make Christmas cards. You know me, I love to make them all year round, but Jenny's not quite ready. We thought it would be fun to team up and show you how dies can be used all year long, whether they're Christmas dies or not. When Jenny showed me her projects for her video, I quickly realized that not only had we chosen the same die set, but we had had the same idea for one of our cards, so I had to go back and rethink. I'll be using this Kaleidoscope Tree die from Spellbinders. This one almost feels like cheating to me. I get that it's a tree, but really it's just a triangle, and that makes it easy to use it in a non-Christmas way. I cut 2 of the top layer from white cardstock and I spritzed them with some distress spray and pewter. I didn't want them silver, just splattered with some silver dots for shine. And again, I'm creating a blue background, but this time I'm using my All-to-New watercolors to create a quick built-up wash. This is such an easy way to create an artistic-looking background. You just put down color with a loaded brush at the top and let it fade as you work down the panel. You dry it and then start again. Repeat until you have the color intensity you want and enjoy the variation in color. This time to add sparkle, I used some Tonic sparkle spray. This adds a more intense sparkle than the Viola shimmer spray and it becomes almost glittery. I lined up my first tree die and then I offset the other one. And because it's an equilateral triangle, presto, I get a beautiful, shimmery, loopy snowflake. To finish it off, I added some pearl white jewels from Pretty Pink Posh. I left it without a sentiment. This is such a pretty design, you could easily make it non-winter themed by changing up the colors. But I have other plans for my non-Christmas use of this die set, and that includes my layered stenciling technique. I love to use full-back sticky notes as masks, but the tree didn't quite fit on them, so I used some masking paper instead. I cut 2 masks for each die layer by simply doubling up the masking paper in my die cutting sandwich. To start, I laid down the top layer mask. This may be counterintuitive in some ways, but the idea is to start with light ink blending and deepen it as you go from layer to layer. I placed the first triangle in the center, and then I used scissors to cut the other one in half. The symmetry of this design makes it really easy to do this. Then I placed 1/2 of the mask on either side of the first triangle to create a continuous design, and I pressed them down to be sure they were secure. I masked off the top and bottom of my panel so that I'll get a strip of color behind the intricate loopy design and preserve some white space on the card front. Then I blended my 3 inks over top, using those All-to-New blending tools. As I said, for the first layer I used a light hand so that as I change out the stencil masks, I can go darker and create the tone-on-tone contrast that I'm looking for. By using pink, yellow, and blue, I got a full 5-color rainbow because of the overlap in the colors. I put the middle layer stencil over top and I repeated the process. I didn't really increase the pressure at this point because just adding another layer gives enough contrast. Then it was time for the last layer, and this time I did increase the pressure to really get deep color and good contrast between the layers, and also a good blend in the colors. For me, the trickiest part in this was making sure that the masks didn't lift at all, and over time I figured out that by blending from the center out to the top or the bottom edges, I had less of that lifting. When I lifted off the final masks, you can see how pretty the intricate design is, with no hint of Christmas at all. I finished this card with a simple sugar script hello from Birch Press Design, stacked up with black cardstock for some contrast. And I didn't add any sequins or jewels, just in case they looked a little too much like Christmas ornaments. I think the easiest way to jump between Christmas or not is to change your color scheme. But you can also look at the shapes of your dies with an open mind, and finally you can add or subtract glitter and sparkle. I hope you're inspired to look at your dies in new ways. Now that you've seen my ideas, hop over to Jenny's video and check out how she used that tree in a different way. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time.